Welcome to another Lombardi Live, and I have a very special guest today. I actually feel like I should probably be saying I have two special guests because his career is so diversified, not only amongst genres, which is usually what we talk about here on Drum Channel, but he's a producer, a songwriter, he is a lyricist, he's a great drummer, a great educator. We could have a complete interview on either one of those subjects. Welcome, Mike Mangini.
Thank you for having me, Don. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
And we need to thank Terry for inspiring you to get an amazing coffee machine.
There you go. There's a story behind the coffee machine. Maybe we'll get to that at the end of the show.
All right.
Actually, they've probably heard it before. If you've looked at my interviews with Terry, we have over 75 Lombardi Live interviews with a lot of the greatest drummers in the world, and such a privilege for us to have you here, all the way from
Boston, Massachusetts.
Boston,
basically.
Massachusetts. You couldn't
near Zildjian.
Hey, you couldn't have come further in order to join us.
Right.
I'm going to jump into a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts. We've had conversations on this before we started filming, and that's the importance of private instruction. Here we are on a website. We have online lessons. You have your website with online lessons. A great adjunct to private instruction, and a great way for people to learn if they don't have the opportunity around the world of having a private teacher near them. But how important was it to your life, and how much do you encourage people to seek out a good private instructor?
Well, it was vital, and I also had a lot of luck because my teacher, starting at age 10, was also the school band director. So I've always had this incredibly strong tie to school band music and the director and all that stuff. So the reason why it's so important is because when someone asks you that question when you're young, oh, what do you want to be and what do you want to do? I mean, you don't really know everything. And sometimes you have an idea. I mean, I wanted to play ice hockey. I wanted to save the planet, go, whatever you say when you're a kid. But when you decide that something is pulling you like a kind of real magnet of sorts, but it's pulling you into music, you only know what you know at the time. So the private instructor connects you to where you're supposed to go, and that's what they're supposed to do, is kind of direct you in that along the way. And without that direction, how do you know where to go? There's so much out there.
You have a lot of stories of teachers, and not just the knowledge of learning how to play the instrument, which of course is vital, and there's no better way to learn than somebody actually showing you the things that you're doing. All the great courses that we have here on Drum Channel is a great way for somebody to learn, but if they're actually taking a lesson with you and you're showing them what they're doing right and wrong, it's an even faster way to learn. But the mentoring is what I've heard has been the most important thing. Huge.
It's absolutely huge. And again, from personal experience, which was very important when I became a teacher, because my whole premise was, I know what you feel like. I actually really know what you feel like, and I'm going to help to connect you to where you want to go. But the mentoring is really vital. I know that my teacher, Walter, who was part of the Waltham, Massachusetts public school system, he's a band director, percussion ensemble director, all of that stuff. He had a way of not telling me what to do as far as you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. He, although he had a bit of that, he really came from a perspective of showing me options to put my will in it and include me in it. And he would say, well, let me give you an example. And this is a tough call right here to do this to anybody. But he wanted to change my left-hand grip. I had been playing, I started out match grip, but then I was switched over to the traditional grip at age 5 with some lessons. And by the time I started studying, when I was older, when I was 10, in elementary school, and we got into the lessons, and I added the 3 rototoms to my kit. And he said, you might want to think about switching over this way. And of course, my reaction is, oh no. Like, no, that's not for me, and blah, blah, blah. So he suggested it again. And then finally, after I just said, no, I just can't do that. He comes in with an anatomy book, and he says, I just want to show you something. so you understand why I'm suggesting this to you and not just telling you. I think you should. And he showed me the muscles. He said, well, with what you're doing, you have 11 muscles working with this. There are 4 working this way, and you're trying to, bend your arm and go up. You'll have a better shot at that hand, which is weaker than your strong one, to become equal. And then I said, okay, on the spot, and switched it because he gave me a good reason. So that kind of mentorship, there's a style to it. You're including people, you're showing them the options, and you're making a claim, but you're backing it up. So it's really good thinking.
And the cool thing about the rudiments course we just shot, which opened up my mind, was you're not just talking about playing rudiments on a pad or on a drum set, you're talking about the ability to hit something. And that could be, from your experience, going back into marching band,
Yep.
Orchestra, drum corps. When people think of Mike, I grew up with Mike. I didn't literally grow up with Mike, but I grew up knowing about Mike's career as a drummer and following him through all of these stages of, and we'll touch on that so you become more aware of it, but as a great drummer, speed man, great teacher. I mean, not just teacher in terms of drum teacher, but teacher at Berklee College of Music for how many years?
A decade.
For a decade. So,
Yeah.
so he has made his mark in the drumming and music and educational area for many years. One of the things that I think that opened up my mind was you talking about your experience playing all those different things at a young level and how that influenced what you did at a later level.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the killer of all was getting stuck playing the triangle part, because you want to hit the big tubular bells and the tempo blocks and the vibra slap. That was just fun to say the word vibra slap and go hit that thing. But the concert band, bass drum, all that. But when you got stuck doing the triangle part, the thing about it is, if you had to count 40 bars of rest and you missed that little ding, the whole place turned around and looked at you. It was like, all you have to do is hit that. Like, what's the big deal? And in the percussion world, we would all stand in the back. We were kind of aware of it, and whoever got stuck on that would kind of like 5 to go, like get out, get ready. But it taught you the value of keeping track of where you are, which develops a kind of counting in your mind, which you don't think you want to do until you realize how beneficial it is when you later on, when you have to count your way through complex charts or songs or whatever, and that skill really changes everything, and it's something you don't want to do. It's just one of many things.
As a drummer, watching your career, I would never have thought of you as a percussionist. For people to really know that you're a percussionist who also plays the drums, and a drummer who also does percussion, you kind of entered, at least my psyche and a lot of young drummers, in the speed area.
Sure.
And whatever, at one point in your life, did you realize I'm going really fast, or did you set that as a goal?
It's always been about the music, but with this kind of thing, there are some genetics involved. I mean, like I could literally, if I had another cup of Terry's wonderful espresso here, I would probably start levitating because I'm that kind of guy, So I have a little bit of that anyway, the fast twitch. But I realized that I had some skill with this when I was 9. My brother, who used to take his hard-earned money and buy me an album and say, learn it, bought me a Buddy Rich big band album, and you don't just learn that. I mean, come on. So I did my best. I'm slowing it down on the LP player to 16 to try to hear what he was doing, but for some reason, that slow motion and whatever skills I possessed allowed me to reflect it in some way. I'm not saying I played Diablo exactly like he did, come on. But I was able to hang with it, or I was able to at least make the noise somehow. And it wasn't until later with the speed thing that this wasn't something that I decided to do as far as having the, how many hits can you do? And
Explain the speed thing was actually a contest.
Yeah,
for
but
many years that you won.
yeah, a bunch. But the thing is, I didn't seek it. It was Dennis Chambers, and if you know Dennis, okay? When Dennis looks at you and says, "Hey, come over here," you kind of go, and I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You're going to sit down and do this thing with your hands." I went, "No, I'm not. I'm like, I'm not interested." And the reason is because when you push yourself for speed, you do things that are not healthy. And I knew that. It's like, I don't want to hurt myself, you know what I mean? Which I really weaved into these courses to
Big
be
part of it, yeah.
really be mindful of what can cause what and how it works, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, Dennis, like, no. And what you talking about? I'm like, what? What'd you say? I'm like, oh God. So I'm like, okay. So I sat down, and he's like one of the greatest humans on the planet, you know what I mean? But he's big. So I wasn't going to say no. And I sat down and did it. And I remember going, ow, and he's like, you could do better. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of notes. I'm like, all right, whatever. And then I made friends with the guys. I'm like, oh, you should try this out or whatever. And it just one thing led to another. But I ended up mentoring people more than doing it myself. Because I could see people doing things that I thought would lead them to be hurt, and other people that were doing certain things I wanted to know about. And it became a real cool discussion forum. Like, well, how are you doing that? And what's going on here? So that's how it really happened.
No, I think one of the things you brought up in your course, which is important, is getting faster and faster isn't muscling it out. It's doing it correctly and then practicing and using your body in which the way it is naturally built in order to get more and more speed. So then I guess the key word that I just used without thinking about it was practicing.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut, is there, in terms of...
No, but the quality of the practice has to do with a few things, if I can. I drew a picture of a person on a drum kit, like a little stick figure, in some different environments, because I wanted to really get a handle on, wait a minute, what is the practice environment? What's it made of? How does it work? These are questions I asked about a lot of things, and they're good questions to ask, because their answers are difficult to find. But essentially, I came to the conclusion that walking into a practice room, you have to make one of two decisions. You either intend on improving that day, or you just want to go play, which is fine. But you do have to make the decision, because once you decide that you would like to improve, then it's the method that you use. In other words, there are things you can practice that will get you worse in a way. What are those things? Well, if a technique it works for very slow playing, might have nothing to do with just a jazz ride pattern that has nothing to do with slow, solid single hits. Because you've got a jazz ride pattern, you're turning your hand like this, the thumb is taking the stick and helping it bounce, go diddly diddly ding diddly ding diddly ding ding. And if you don't really get that and you try to muscle it out, you're not going to improve at that. So it depends on what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then at the end of the day, it all has to do with your intention, and I think your intention has to do with your will. Like, I really would like to work on this thing today, or I just don't feel like it. I would rather do this. And you make that decision and you go and practice. But it takes time to develop strength. You don't do that in 5 seconds.
No, and when I use the word technique in my mind, I'm talking about a wide variety of things you need to learn as a drummer, technically, reading, independence, performance, and just speed is a way in which you can, I guess, speed to the point to where you can play anything you want to hear. The instrument is so unique because you don't have to have great technique to be a great drummer.
Right,
And a lot of great drummers have great technique.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting for me, we haven't talked about this before. So I'm interviewing the fastest drummer in the world many year after year. However,
at times I got a couple of good numbers.
you got some good numbers. However, I've also interviewed somebody else who was really the fastest drummer in the world.
One of my students?
No.
Well, who?
No, Will Power.
Oh.
He won the Indianapolis 500, and he's a drummer. So technically he would be the fastest drummer because he won the Indianapolis 500.
I have a couple students that have surpassed me anyway, but go ahead.
No, that's it was always
That's funny.
it was a running joke with Will, right?
Yeah, that's good. That's
so,
good. That's good. But the speech for the music.
Yeah, exactly.
Not everybody hears it that way.
No. Thinking about from Dream Theater, Berklee College of Music. Again, as I did in the introduction, it seems like I would be interviewing two separate drummers over there. It's kind of like large shrimp, two things that don't go together. But
both of me enjoyed the coffee.
Yeah, both of you. Well, so bridging that gap, or not even bridging that gap, pursuing those careers as a great educator who could play drums, as a lot of great educators do, or great drummers who educate a little, but somebody to really great at both is unique. It is kind of like two career paths at one.
Yeah, you know, that came back to this drum teacher, band director, Walter Tokarczuk, and there are many people that study with him, and all of us would take a bullet for him. You know, that's how good he was at this. But he instilled in me having a sense of perspective. What are you doing? How does it work? Like, why? And why, how, whatever. And what do you want, or what might be right for you? And one of those things was mallets. Now this caused a big scene, because when you studied drum lessons in a public school system in Massachusetts, where I was, I grew up in Waltham, Massachusetts, even though I was born over at rival Newton, sports-wise, but that's a whole nother discussion. So Walter said to me one day, when we were alternating lessons from snare drum to orchestra bells, snare drum, orchestra bells. And I didn't show up for the lesson one day because I spent some time on the staircase in my house crying and saying, I'm not going to drum lessons anymore. I hate those bells. I'd rather get stung by a handful of hornets right in the eyeball. I do not want to look at this. I just hate it. And they're like, it just got in this whole thing. And I was like, okay, whatever, don't go. And so I didn't go, and I'm sitting there in 5th grade math class with my teacher, Miss Carroll. I remember this like it's a video playing in my brain. And there comes Walter going, I need to talk to him. Pulls me out of the class, and it's like, what are you doing? And it led to him suspending bell lessons. So, suspended bell lessons. Then he kind of creeped it back in. I'm like, what are you doing? And he said to me, you don't know it yet, but you'll thank me, because this is how people write music. This is how you can relate to the people that write music. And you're a musician. You need to learn this for things that you don't yet understand. But something was important with this relationship, which is where the mentorship comes in. I trusted him. And I trusted him because he displayed an ability to make a claim and back it up. And I would notice that the things he would say would happen. They would come true. All I had to do was now, outside of trusting him, just trust the method. So I got into the bells again, and sure enough, that's how I composed all kinds of music, and I do it now. Like I'm not going to sit there and sight read a jazz vibraphone part and do all the things that you're supposed to do, or hit clunker notes, you know. I'm still that kid that like, I don't know. But I write the music all on the keyboard instruments. And these days with virtual instruments, you can get any sound you want.
How important is it for young drummers, we talk about this a lot on Drum Channel, to branch out? We have a show that's called Drummers Who Compose, but in order to make a living, especially today, if they're looking at aspiring to have it as a career, to be able to go beyond playing the instrument itself and be a writer and a producer and a videographer and everything you need to do.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's interesting you use the word beyond, because that's kind of what it is you have to get beyond you perceiving yourself sitting on a stool, a throne. We like to call it a throne, right? So you're sitting on a throne behind all these drums. You have to get beyond that, literally, visually. You have to visualize yourself from another perspective. And what happens when you see that is you start to see there are other people around you. There are other components to the environment. And you got to step out of it, because when you try to write a piece of music, what happens is you can relate to these people better. And this is the most mind-blowing thing that happened to me, was I noticed that each song I would compose on a keyboard, no matter how bad it sounded on the sequencer, like back in the 80s or whatever, that I'd present to the band and people would bring in their pieces of music, I kept noticing that the drum parts that ended up in the songs that I wrote were the most boring of all. It was a bizarre thing, and it was because I was in the seat of the songwriter wanting a drummer to just not mess my song up. Does that make any sense? It's just like, would you just play the beat, please, and stop with all the stuff? And I sat back and went, oh my gosh. And there I am fighting, previous, like, no, the paradiddly-do goes here, and I can hit every 13th note and play this with my left foot, and wow, look at this drum part and how fun it is, and I'm using all these skills, and it's like, that's why the songwriter's like, can you just not do that for a minute? So that's what it helped with, was a perspective.
Great part of the learning experience.
Yeah.
As a writer, you heard a drummer doing something that you didn't want to be the drummer that was doing that when you had the gig and you were called for it.
Yep, you learn a little bit about what it feels like to be someone else working with you.
And touching on the business end of the business, it's important also, because that's where the money is in terms of writing credits and royalties.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And drummers can be part of the composition process, but it has to birth it. In other words, I've offered unique sounding drum parts that you hear melody in, that music has been written on. Now that's part of the composition process. That happened to me with Extreme, with a song called Leave Me Alone, which was written on this melodious thing that I was doing with two hi-hats and opening and closing, and the certain tone of the cymbals that kind of relates to pitches and things. So a song was written based on that. Then I was part of the music publishing, and because I was part of that, there I am in my apartment one day when a check showed up, and I was like, as soon as I saw it, I thought two things. Like, I'm going to purchase some more songwriting gear, and I'm going to play golf 4 days a week, and I'm going to finally be good at that game. Those are the two things that came across my mind, and I did them both.
Nobody's sending you a check for your golf playing, though.
Yeah, no, not anymore. I mean, if you get away from that, talk about, sometimes practicing an instrument for decades, it becomes like riding a bike, but you're not going to escape, the decay of your muscles or whatever, and the signal sending process. But with golf, man, all you have to do is stay away from that for a certain amount of days and go back, and you're hitting the ball into the next city sideways. What happened?
Drumming is not dangerous. Golf can be dangerous.
Yeah.
You're a Grammy Award winner.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that experience.
That's a fun thing to talk about, and it isn't necessarily just about that award itself, because there could be plenty of claims made and arguments that, well, it doesn't mean that much, and look at this band won a Grammy, but they weren't even really that kind of band. Like, that wasn't right, that wasn't fair, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I understand that. I didn't fall off an onion truck, so I know what these people are talking about. But the thing about it that was so special is that the song, The Alien with Dream Theater, came from a post-discussion about what to do on the record, and we'll go in this direction. But I offered this. I said, I just want to go into the live room and play like I'm a kid. I really just want to let everything go and play like, okay, I'm 18, I've accumulated a few chops, and that's who I want to be. Anybody that wants to go, like, that's what I'm going to go do. So I got up and I went in the room, and our keyboard player, Jordan, came in first, and I said, hey, I have this motif of 17, which is very, okay, that's progressive, right? But it was groove. It was superimposed in 6/8. 6/8 is a great groove. That's a great, great groove, right? But the 17 was sort of a mutated clave. Instead of bop, bop, ga, 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 I just did two bop bops, or the 5, like dot 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 dot. I'm like, look, we can put that here, and then we can put it in 4/4, but it's really not 4/4, and then we can just play 17. And then the guys came in, and that's how the song got birthed. So it was birthed, and then they put the notes on that. Like, I didn't offer anything on my little keyboard there because, I'm in a room with the best, players on the planet like that. And they're so quick. They were such a great experience to work with them because they were just so like, I got this and this and this, and like, I didn't have any chance to like offer my little ideas because I'm like, well, look who I'm in a room with. Just put it away for now, But that was the whole thing. It was birthed from heart. It was all from the heart. And the song is almost like this disastrous amount of notes and stuff. And I remember doing it, giggling, going up the drums and down the drums and doing the 17 twice as fast with one hand over here and hitting this over there and going ding. And it was hilarious to me. And then the song won a performance Grammy, kind of, it just made me smile. And when I share that with people, this is another part of it that's a little abnormal, I guess. When I got the Grammy, I refused to wait until the carrier delivered it to my house because like 8 or 9 deliveries got botched and stuff was stolen. And I was like, oh, this is a Grammy. So I drove to Timbuktu, to northern Alaska to get it. It seemed like it with Boston traffic, let me tell you. And I live like way south of the city. But anyway, I drove to get it, and I actually made the woman behind the counter open. I go, open that up. It was a big smile on my face. She goes, ooh, look at this. So the box itself struck me. I'm like, this is the exact size of one of my kick drum pedal cases, like the one over there. And I don't know why it hit me like that, but I took the foam that the Grammy was in and just tested it. It fit like perfectly in this case, and I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. And I realize how this is going to sound, but you got to understand, I'm Italian-American. I grew up with houses full of relatives, and we always had the little liqueur after the meal, the digestive. That was like, we're going to have a digestive now. I'm like, well, I'll have a digestive, right? So I showed up at parties, and a lot of them, neighborhoods, right where I live. I took it to friends' houses, relatives, and I took the Grammy with a little bottle of something, and I had people do a little bit of a sip out of the Grammy, and you can't believe the smile on all the faces of these people that I shared this with. And they're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're going to dent it. I'm like, I don't care. It's like the Stanley Cup.
Sure.
So anyway, I know that's a long story, but I wanted to share my joy of how it came to be, to legitimize it as a really cool thing, and also how I share it. It makes me happy.
Well, and what's important, I think, for a lot of the young drummers out there is your journey to get to that point.
Yeah.
You didn't fall off the turnip truck and go into that session and then get a Grammy.
Correct.
It was a culmination of all these things that you did.
And work with other people. That's the other thing. And I will remember in jazz band, this was competition. I grew up from age 10, zing, to 18, like that. Those years right there was all about competition, but healthy competition. You learned how to prepare. You learned how to take advice. You learned how to really get into this whole thing. But when you did it as a team, it's way better than the individual. That's why when people win the Stanley Cup or the World Series, that's why you see the joy that you see. I mean, you can win an award by yourself, but it's not as good.
You won many awards, even back in your high school days,
Yeah.
I believe we talked about. You
Yeah.
weren't just a percussionist, you were the first chair in all of these different. So you exceeded in every single one of those areas.
I worked hard. I mean, I cared about it. And people around me had confidence. I did it almost for them. It's almost like my teacher looking at me with those eyes and saying, you can do this if you want, but you have to go on it. Go do the work.
Sure. We had a great interview with Terry Bozzio being the host, talking with Steve Vai, that's on Drum Channel right now. And it was the first opportunity I had to meet Steve. He was a great gentleman. But
Unbelievable.
Your experience with Steve.
From the way that I was invited into his world, to the way that he generously took me in and worked with me, to the way that we did not have a day without laughing at something. We laughed at something. But that's kind of a lengthy story. I don't know how far, because I can say so many wonderful things about that experience and about Steve. But the thing is, when you feel like somebody understands you, there's like a breath. There's a breath you can take. It was different in that I could speak about the depths of the rhythmic microscopic world of tuplets and groupings and dynamics and polyrhythms, and the use, he understood the use of all those drums. That yes, that tiny little cymbal means something because orchestrally it fits the tone of the music, or maybe a harmonic up high on the guitar. It's almost like, I always pictured it, that to hit a big, heavy rock and roll kind of note, you're not going to hit a little drum that sounds like a chihuahua barking. Like, beep. It doesn't fit. Steve got that. I realized as a composer, albeit not like him, but a composer nonetheless, I realized what it felt like to be him. And so I said, you know what? What do you need? What would you like? And it became a running joke that he would challenge me. He kept pushing me and challenging me on, like, I did flams at the beginning of Fire Garden or Bangkok, whatever, and it's like, those aren't tight enough. Tighten up the flam. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to tighten the flam. Like, is this tight enough? Is that tight enough for you? I'm going to do a unison. I'm going to widen the flam, and you tell me exactly where in the wideness you like it. And it made fun. And he goes, yes. I was like, okay, let's do this. Stuff like, just, you get the idea, is that you understood each other. There was a trust. Sense of humor really is a big, big deal in life. Luckily I grew up around people that are funny, and they weren't afraid to not be funny, which I've toted that boundary sometimes, or sometimes I'm not funny, I'm trying to be. But Steve had that. Anyway, there you go.
When he told you what to hit,
yeah,
were you talking about rhythmically what to play, or what tone colors actually to play?
Like everything.
Okay.
I know he enjoyed this, because it was like I was that person that I decided I wanted to be when I was in college. I can program my body. I can learn things and learn a way to assign a sound to a limb and tell those limbs what to do at will, just like this thing called a drum machine that people just program. So when I grew up and I was in a studio with Steve Vai, he was doing this to me. And I thought it was hilarious. And I enjoyed every bit of it, because once we got it right, there was now a joy between the two of us that would listen to this thing and go, oh, we did that. And that's fun.
You said when you grew up. I would challenge you in hanging with you here for these last days. I think you're still growing up, because you have such an excitement and so many things happening in the future, and everything that you're digging into right now, and your passion for education and passing that torch, if you will,
right,
on to the younger generation. And part of our challenge here is getting you all that information here on Drum Channel and through Mike's website also.
And that's why I'm here.
So Steve, were you nominated for a Grammy with something you did with Steve also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Two,
okay.
Yeah.
And which were those?
For the Love of God.
Okay.
Which was a live track. I have something interesting to say about that experience and recording.
He couldn't tell you what to do then, because it was live.
Yeah, yes, he could, with one look.
Oh, okay.
And he used to turn around and give me a look, because that's the thing about music and language. It's a language, you're communicating with people. So I would hit things on purpose out of place or whatever, and I enjoyed getting that head turn from him, or whatever it was. But what was
communicating
the Windows to the Soul, which was the 11 piece. I loved playing that, because I could play fully lefty, fully righty. He didn't tell me, oh, you have too much stuff, too many drums, too many notes. He's like, let's use this. And he let me go. He let me, offer a beat and a groove that's like, it shouldn't sound good. It's so mechanically difficult. It shouldn't have even worked. But we did get that Grammy nomination for it, and it felt nice.
A lot of the things that along that exact line that impresses me is when you do see some of these things written out, even in the course that we've just shot here, you look at them on paper transcribed and it's like, this can't swing. But you hear, because it looks like, how are you ever going to fit this note in with that note?
Yeah.
But when you play it, it's just the opposite. You don't even know it's in an odd time.
Yeah, well, that's the cool thing. And I as you know from watching me film all these courses, you know that I have broken everything down into its most fundamental element, which makes it easy to do, easy to comprehend here, and it gives a sense of, well, that's not that difficult, I can do that. And so as each of the courses steps through, those steps are attainable. You know, you're not trying to jump up here, but the thing about what you just mentioned with the grouping or whatever is, it is about the music. It's just nice to know what you played so you can repeat it. Or if someone understands this language, that they can say to you, hey, can you try this? May I share how one of these odd things worked in a popular song and it was not supposed to? So that is with Extreme, actually. And you know, there's a big fill to start a song called Hip Today, and I was in the studio and I presented a cluster of notes to Nuno. And that cluster of notes, imagine a small bucket full of golf balls just being tossed on the drum kit. And it's nice to know within the rhythm of those, because I offered him a cluster of notes, and no, oh yeah, no, that one.
By cluster of notes, you mean you played
a roll.
Okay.
It was like brrr.
Oh, anything.
Yeah. So I took all my limbs and I went brrr, rap. Okay. So that's the sound. And this is where the odd groupings come in handy, because even groupings and normal ones, like square ones, like you hear the time division with, but an odd group, it's like ooh, like that roll has more feeling. And it's this supposedly technical thing that many people frown upon because it's complex and odd. And just be quiet and listen to it, you know? Does that make music or not? What's the intention? So I offered these and he chose the 10-note grouping, which busted into two little groupings of 5. And whether that's even, I don't even know I did that. I think I did it right. But it had a feeling. Boom, rap. This had that feeling to it. And so that's where the odd number of notes, or how do you fit that in here, was based on music and became a musical thing. It wasn't a what can I fit in kind of thing.
Go through and outline for everybody really quickly the course that we just did, the 5 lessons, and how they interrelate with everything you're talking about.
They interrelate in that fundamentally. I'll give you an example. The course on rudiments for all percussionists is like literally for anybody that hits things, is broken down in order per how the brain is sending the signal to the hands. So it goes in a specific order, muscle group wise. So I've reordered the rudiments unlike anything else that you'll see, because I have a protocol to it. And each of the courses has that protocol. For example, okay, so this is a fundamental way that the human person works to learn these things called rudiments. And I chose the order based on the musculature and the motions. The course that is all styles, that builds up in terms of its coordination difficulty. So that I've started out with a fundamental way to sound like an Afro-Cuban player without having any knowledge of Afro-Cuban. And so you do not sound like a rock player trying to play it, or a rock player trying to play jazz, which is very ding, 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 with the kick drum going boof, boof, boof. So the course is fundamental in nature. With the course on ostinatos, that is based on the styles, but it's also based fundamentally, like the rudiments course, simple. Just make this limb be your focus, and you have 3 other limbs. Let's learn this permutation system, but fundamentally. And so if you pay attention to the ostinatos in that course, and you look at the stylistic course and you look at the course on rudiments, it's like, oh, wow, well, I want to sound like this kind of player. I will practice these things from my body, and I will strike it based on what I'm learning my hands over in this course, be it a marimba, a vibraphone, a concert bass drum, your hands, a vibra slap, whatever it is, which is a fun instrument to play, by the way. You know, who doesn't want to sound like Closer to the Heart, Russia Fair, Walter Kings, and go, gosh. If we all wanted to do that in school band, you know, that music was out at the time, like, give me the vibra slap. We'd sing Close to the Heart and go, gosh. Anyway, just for some fun and humor. But what was the other course I did? Oh, yeah, I did one in the E-Kit. It's a fundamental approach to what is this? How does it work? How can I use this? So that's the basic thing, is there are fundamentals associated with each of the courses, and they step you through, and then they interrelate based on what your needs are. What do you need to learn? Okay, you're going to get that done very, very quickly if you do what is suggested that you do in these courses.
It'll open up your mind in a new way, I think, to, you know, the joys of making music as a drummer.
Yeah.
And if you check it out right now, even if you're sitting on your couch as we are, enjoying our conversation, there's a few courses. One course at the beginning, the first couple of lessons, you didn't even need to have a drum set. You could do it wherever you're at.
Right.
That opens up your mind. So that's a little bit of a teaser for you, I think. Talking about, and you hit on it a little bit, because I think it's a concern of a lot of young drummers, especially some of the older drummers who used to play and they're getting back into it, but they were the 4/4 guys, the rock guys. Mm-hmm. As soon as they hear odd time signatures, it's like, ooh, that's nice, but it's way advanced for me. And here in your course, you're breaking it down so it's digestible for everybody.
The rhythm course for all musicians.
Yes.
That one.
Yeah.
Absolutely broken down.
Speaking of odd and even times, if I were to count to 1, 2, 3, and 4, I'd be able to cover every one of the volumes you have of your rhythm knowledge course.
That's right,
However,
so far.
But I know there's another. You're not going to leave it at an even number, so there's going to be a fifth one coming up. But tell everybody about what you've got and what's happening.
That red book is It's Easy When You Know How. It basically says, look, we're a human person. This is how we work. The best that I could do as a drummer that studied some things academically to a very, very, not an expert level, but enough that I got what I needed. And so It's Easy When You Know How explains what am I, how do I work, what's music notation, how does it work, what is coordination, like how does it work? That's what's in the red book. The blue book is a set of 5 systems, not exercises. They're systems. What you do is you can pick and choose, you can cherry pick who you want to become. You can cherry pick what would I like to do, what limb pair, what avenue. Do I want to work on the feeling of notes between a pulse? Do I want to work on a time signature thing? Do I want to work on my internal clock and my timekeeping? And just hit the silly little tubs in time, for crying out loud, for 5 minutes. That's a big call. Play in time, but those exercise systems can be made into specific exercises. And the way I used it as a teacher is I would pick exercises for people, but like my teacher, I would include them on why I did it. I'd say, look, I'm choosing these things, and if you want to embellish on it, here's a whole other set of things you can choose to change up if you're bored. The third book is The Ultimate Stickings. Now, there's some humor behind that. Because I don't know about you, but I've never counted how many books have stickings in them. How many are there? Like thousands, 17,444, things with rights and lefts. The humor of it is that nobody needs anybody else to tell them that something is a right or a left. You can do that. You can read it and go, okay, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Okay, great. That's not the problem. Though I call that the ultimate stickings because as stickings I included the voice and the mind, which has not been done in any book with lefts and rights. I also have an order to the lefts and rights, and they're in groups. So it's very easy to get a perspective on the simplicity of these rights and lefts, but the inclusion of the voice as something actually making a noise, and how that translates to the mind's ability to keep track of things. That's it. I don't want it to sound complicated because it's fundamental. The fourth book, what it does is it gives you a perspective as you're playing your instrument to how to switch the pairings on a dime. This is previously impossible in my mind. With the right side playing for music purposes, and you add your left side in, and you have these ostinato things. The typical is do them with your feet, make your hands do, quote, a solo. It's usually not the reverse. It's usually not the hands are steady and the feet solo on different timbres and tones and sounds. It's the perspective that prevents us from doing this. So that book unlocks it easily. Can you do it easily? No. You need to get in a room and trust it, and so it's based on something in the Blue Book. I don't want to go too far with it, but all it is it's easier when you know how. It's easier when you know what. The third book is it's easier when you expand when you know how and what. And the fourth book is it's possible when you really, really, really get all the how and the what.
It seems like that's covered everything. However, breaking news, is there a fifth book in the works? I've heard rumors of that.
Of course, there has to be a number 5. I used to yell the number out and didn't know why. And it would make people laugh that I would yell a number. Like, what are you doing? It was like, are you okay? Did your grandmother put too much Sambuca in the coffee? Like, what's wrong with you? But yes, there's a fifth one that will come out. And of course, it's going to be the color that's expected. Next in line, of course, your assistant Jenny came out and right away went, "Where's the blah blah book?" I went, "That's the next one." So it will be a matter of my getting better at making these complex things even simpler, and making a collection of things that are everyday needs and wants or curious things for a musician. But the bottom line is that anyone that's read that first book, and I mean anyone, has responded to me with the words, "Man, that this applies to anything. It applies to life." I'm like, "You're right. It does. You'll be a better, definitely anything hand-eye, throwing a dart, playing ice hockey, football, sports of all kinds. When you read the book, you get it. You go, oh, okay." It's like there was a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And of course, a student brought this book and said, "I would like to give you this as a gift." It's like, because it's kind of like you're talking about this. I'm like, "Thank you." And I read it, and yeah, it was about the inner dialogue inside of us when we do things.
It was by Tim Galloway, by the way, somebody I had met and spent some time with.
What's that?
Tim Galloway was the writer of that. There's also The Inner Game of Music.
Yes.
There's another one. But that what you're explaining is exactly right. It's how your mind is interpreting what's going on.
Right. And so I took that as confirmation to my systems. And so I don't rewrite someone else's book, but it's essentially hitting on that, but with hand-eye coordination types of things and management things. You're managing a situation. You're managing your practice. And how about this? You're managing how your career can go, because you get a perspective and ask the question, studio musician, what is a studio and how does it work? And then you realize that there are people in the studio, and then the light bulb goes off and you come to the conclusion that I will not get in that environment unless it's through people. So you have to know how to connect and relate. Otherwise, you're not getting in there. Perspective.
If anybody could break this down and take something that's complicated and make it simple, kind of your life quest, and doing things that are very, very difficult, as you have, blazed all these trails and won all these awards, and rightfully so. And musically, it goes from being a great drummer, technically, mastering the instrument. Not that anybody ever masters the instrument,
right?
But and at the same time, musically, applying all that in a way in which you get a Grammy. It's all about the music. I can't thank you enough for sharing all those opportunities with us here. Where can somebody get these books? How are they available, and how can people get in touch with you?
I'll just give him my cell number. 8675309.
That's not it, by the way, everybody watching it. Don't call him up.
Anyway, I'm going to give him your cell. I memorize numbers now. Watch out. Okay, so I can't remember names, but I remember credit card numbers and all kinds of things.
That's why you're great at odd time signatures.
Oh, yeah, I know. I've been students. I'm like, what's your name? And I blast their ID out. They're like, you
I know
psycho.
11, 7, and 13, but I'm not so sure.
So it's easy to find me. I have a link tree.
And if you are lost out there getting a hold of Mike or have any questions for him, you can just click us out here at support at Drum Channel, and we'll connect you with him and doing a lot more. And something that's breaking news coming up that's going to be in our future, be one of our coming soons, is Mike's going to be doing some fun stuff with a great friend of ours, Mr. Terry Bozzio.
That'll be fun. I hope it all, like, I hope the stars align. And
the stars are getting aligned, no question about that.
Okay.
Mike, I thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you for having me, and
absolutely
just doing what you do, because your intention is so good. It's just that's a good thing. You know, you're bringing to people, and you care about helping someone get from here to there.
Yeah, and what keeps me going is the journey with all the great drummers in the world like yourself, and everybody out there too. It's really important for you to join in. Let us know what you would like to have more of, what you're working on, what you're practicing. The drum community is a community.
Yes, it is.
And you're as much a part of it as we are here too. So thank you for watching Drum Channel and my Lombardi Live. Check back on drumchannel.com. See what's coming up soon and next. You'll have a good time.